I wanted to spend the weekend with my grandchildren, but my son-in-law snapped, "You want to be with them? Pay 2,000." I smiled as if agreeing and handed him an envelope. He was expecting money, but found something else. When he opened it, his face turned white, and he roared with rage. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I was halfway through the sports section when I heard the BMW pull into my driveway. The engine had a particular purr. Expensive, maintained, bought with money that should have gone elsewhere. I set down my coffee and waited. Neil didn't knock. The front door opened, and he walked in like he owned the place. Maybe he thought he did. "Carl, hey, good to catch you home on a Saturday." His smile was wide, practiced. He'd worn that same expression 2 years ago when he first asked to borrow $3,000 for what he called a consulting opportunity. "You got a minute? I wanted to run something past you." I folded the newspaper precisely, creasing it down the middle. "I've got time." He settled into the armchair across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The posture of a man about to share something valuable, something exclusive. I'd seen it before. "There's this investment opportunity, a real estate syndication in Tampa. Ground floor stuff, Carl. My partner needs commitments by Monday, and I'm 5,000 short of my buy-in." He spread his hands, palms up. "I know it's last minute, but this kind of chance doesn't come around often." I took a sip of coffee. It had gone lukewarm. "What happened to the other opportunities?" I kept my voice level, the same tone I'd used giving orders at fire scenes. Calm, clear, impossible to misinterpret. His smile tightened. "What do you mean?" "The consulting gig in February of 23. That was 3,000. Then the cryptocurrency platform in July. 4,000. The marketing venture last April. 5,000 more." I met his eyes. 12,000 total, Neil. I kept track. The smile disappeared. He sat back, and something shifted in his face. The mask he'd been wearing developed cracks. "Those were investments, not loans. You know how business works. There's risk involved." His voice had an edge now, sharper. "Some things take time to mature." 2 years is plenty of time." I set my mug down carefully on the side table. "The answer is no." He stood abruptly. The movement was aggressive, meant to intimidate. He began pacing 3 steps toward the window, 3 steps back. "You spent 30 years running into burning buildings, Carl. What do you really know about building wealth in 2025? He gestured around my living room. Modest furniture, clean but dated. "You're sitting here in this same house, same routine, same outdated thinking. The world moved on. I'm comfortable." My hands remained still in my lap, and I earned what I have. "Comfortable?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what comfortable gets you. Nothing. Meanwhile, Effie and I are trying to build something for Micah and Tyler's future, and you're worried about the ancient history." "Ancient history is $12,000 I'll never see again." His jaw clenched. He stopped pacing and stood directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head slightly to maintain eye contact. The intimidation was deliberate. "Let me explain something to you, old man." The words came slower now, each one chosen for maximum impact. "You think you understand modern business because you read the newspaper and watched the news? You don't. This investment is real, and it's happening with or without you. I'm giving you a chance to be part of my family's success." "I am part of your family." My hands tightened almost imperceptibly around the armrests. "I'm Effie's father. Those boys' grandfather." "Are you?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was a problem to solve. "Because from where I'm standing, you're choosing money over your own daughter, over your grandsons." The threat hung in the air between us, not quite spoken, but perfectly clear. "The answer is still no." I said it quietly, but firmly, the same way I'd told a rookie firefighter not to enter an unstable structure. "I'm done enabling this pattern." His expression went cold. The pretense of friendliness, of family connection, evaporated completely. "Your choice." He straightened, adjusted his jacket. "But don't be surprised if you stop hearing from Effie and forget about seeing Micah and Tyler. That's your decision right there. You're choosing it." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "Think about what you're giving up over $5,000. Think real hard." Then he was gone. The door closed behind him, not slammed, but firmly enough to make a point. Through the window, I watched him get into his BMW, back out of the driveway with barely a glance at the rearview mirror. I sat in the sudden silence. My coffee mug was still where I'd left it, newspaper folded beside it. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 15 minutes ago, but something had fundamentally changed. I stood slowly and walked to the mantel where Effie's last Christmas photo sat in a silver frame. Micah and Tyler grinned at the camera, gap-toothed and happy. Effie stood between them, one hand on each boy's shoulder. Neil was positioned slightly apart, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, even then. I'd paid off their mortgage, $73,000 over 3 years, every payment on time, because Effie said they were struggling and she was scared they'd lose the house. I'd watched my savings account shrink month by month and told myself it was worth it. Family was worth it. The $12,000 in loans had come after that, after he already knew I'd give. I picked up my phone, stared at Effie's contact information. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I already knew what would happen if I called. Neil would be standing there, listening, or he'd have already told her what to say, how to handle me. I set the phone down. Outside, the neighborhood was Saturday morning quiet. Somewhere a lawnmower started up. Normal life continuing. I returned to my chair and sat down. The newspaper remained folded. The coffee was cold. I didn't move for a long time, just sat there feeling something crystallize inside me. Not anger, not quite. Something colder and more focused. Recognition, understanding, clarity about what happened next. By evening, I'd tried calling Effie 5 times. The first call went straight to voicemail, her voice cheerful, recorded months ago, asking me to leave a message. The second rang 4 times before the voicemail kicked in. The third, I let it ring until the system disconnected me. On the 4th attempt, she answered, "Dad, I can't." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Effie, what's going on?" I kept my tone gentle but urgent. "Talk to me." I have to go." The line went dead. I stared at my phone screen. The call had lasted 6 seconds. The 5th call went to voicemail again. This time I left a message. "Effie, it's your father. I need to know you and the boys are okay. Call me when you can." She didn't call back. I spent Saturday evening sitting at my kitchen table, phone within reach, waiting. The wait stretched into night. I made dinner, grilled chicken, rice, and ate without tasting it. The phone stayed silent. By Sunday morning, I'd made my decision. The drive to Maple Ridge Drive took 15 minutes, though I'd driven it 100 times and could make it with my eyes closed. This morning, every traffic light seemed longer. Every turn felt deliberate. I wasn't rushing to a fire. I was walking into one. Their house looked the same as always. Red brick, white trim, landscaping I'd helped Neil install 2 summers ago. My truck looked out of place in the driveway next to his BMW, working-class vehicle beside something sleek and expensive. I walked to the front door and knocked, waited. Through the sidelight window, I could see movement inside, shadows crossing the hallway. Neil opened the door. He didn't step aside. "Carl!" His voice was flat, neutral. "This isn't a good time. The boys have activities scheduled." Behind him, I could see into the living room. Micah and Tyler were building something with blocks on the floor, their voices carrying that particular excitement children have when they're deep in play. Effie moved through the background, from kitchen to dining room, carrying plates. I'd like to see them. I kept my hands at my sides, non-threatening, just for a few minutes. Like I said, not a good time. He adjusted his stance, filling the doorframe more completely. His arms crossed his chest. "They're busy. We've got a schedule to keep." 5 minutes. No. We stood there, 2 men separated by a threshold. Through the doorway, Micah's voice rose in triumph. "Tyler, look, the tower's taller than me." The sound of my voice must have carried because suddenly both boys looked toward the door. "Grandpa!" Micah dropped his blocks and ran. Tyler followed, their feet pounding on the hardwood floor. They hit Neil from behind, trying to squeeze past his legs. Tyler managed to duck under his father's arm, launching himself at me with complete trust that I'd catch him, which I did, kneeling down fast enough to wrap him in a hug. "Grandpa, we made a fort yesterday and Mom let us sleep in it." Tyler's words tumbled out in a rush. "And I lost another tooth, see?" He pulled back his lip to show me the gap. Micah was still trying to get past Neil, who had grabbed his shoulder. "Boys!" Neil's voice cut through their excitement like a blade. Inside. Now. But Grandpa just got here. Micah started. I said now. Neil's hand tightened on Micah's shoulder, turning him bodily back toward the living room. Tyler, let go of your grandfather. Tyler's arms loosened around my neck. I could feel his confusion, the way children sense adult tension without understanding it. It's okay, buddy. I ruffled his hair and stood, giving him a gentle push toward his father. You go on. Both boys retreated, looking back over their shoulders. Their excitement had transformed into uncertainty, into something that looked uncomfortably like fear. Effie appeared in the hallway behind Neil. Our eyes met. She looked thinner than I remembered, her shoulders curved inward. She opened her mouth, closed it, then mouthed something I couldn't quite catch. Sorry, maybe. Or help. Neil waited until the boys were out of earshot before he spoke again. Here's how this works, Carl. He leaned against the doorframe, casual now, confident. If you want time with Micah and Tyler, the rate is $2,000 per weekend. That's my time you're taking as their father. That's the disruption to our family schedule. Consider it a consultation fee. The words landed with calculated precision, not asked, stated. 2,000, I repeated it, making sure I'd heard correctly. Per weekend, cash. He smiled slightly. You want to be grandfather of the year? That's the price. Otherwise, we're too busy. Schedule's packed. You understand? I looked past him at Effie. She'd pressed herself against the hallway wall, her arms wrapped around her torso. When I caught her eye, she gave a slight shake of her head. Not defiance. Resignation. I see. The words came out flat, emotionless. I didn't trust myself to say more. Good talk. Neil pushed off the doorframe, his hand already on the door. Let me know what you decide. The door closed. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood there for a moment, looking at that closed door, at the brass numbers spelling out the address, at the doormat that said, Welcome home. Then I walked back to my truck, got in, and sat with my hands on the steering wheel. Through the front window, I could see the boys had returned to their blocks. Tyler looked towards the door once. Then Neil said something, and he turned away. The drive home was different from the drive there. Shorter, somehow. Clearer. I pulled into my garage, went inside, and walked directly to the safe in my bedroom closet. 3 turns right, 2 left, 1 right. The heavy door swung open with a metallic sigh. Inside were the important documents. Birth certificates, my service records, insurance policies, and underneath everything else, a thick folder labeled Maple Ridge Property. I carried it to the kitchen table and opened it. The mortgage documents were all there, organized chronologically. Every payment I'd made, check copies paper-clipped to the monthly statements, $73,000. The final payoff letter was dated 18 months ago. I pulled out a fresh notebook from the drawer and opened it to the first page. At the top, I wrote, Neil Morrison, account. Then I began listing in careful handwriting every transaction. February 2023, $3,000, consulting opportunity. July 2023, $4,000, cryptocurrency platform. April 2024, $5,000, marketing venture. Below that, I added Maple Ridge mortgage payments, January 2022 through June 2023. Total, $73,000. My pen paused above the paper. Then I wrote one more line. March 2025, $2,000 weekend demanded for grandchildren access. I set down the pen and looked at what I'd written. The numbers told a clear story. Pattern of exploitation. Systematic extraction. Now, extortion. The property deed lay beside my notebook, 73 pages of legal text describing ownership, rights, and obligations. I'd read it once when I started making payments, but hadn't looked at it since. I pulled it closer and began reading again. This time, I read every word. The notary's seal caught my eye, embossed into the bottom of the deed, March 15th, 2022. 3 years ago. My finger traced the indentation, and suddenly I was back at that kitchen table on a different evening, the phone pressed to my ear. Effie's voice had cracked with each word. Dad, we're going to lose the house. I'd pulled the phone away slightly, her sobbing that raw. Behind her I could hear Tyler crying. He would have been 4 then, old enough to sense his mother's panic. The bank sent the final notice. $68,000. We have 30 days, and I don't know what to do. She'd taken a shaky breath. The boys, where will we go? I'd been standing in almost the same spot I sat now, looking out at the darkening yard, and my retirement account statement had been on the counter. $72,000, accumulated over 30 years of service, nearly everything I had. How much do you need? My voice had been steady then, the same way it stayed steady when I told a rookie the building was coming down and we had to move now. All of it. The full payoff. I know it's everything you saved, but I'll take care of it. The silence on her end had lasted several seconds. Then, Dad, are you sure? That's your retirement. You're my daughter. Those boys are my grandsons, I'm sure. I'd gone to the bank the next morning. The branch manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled my accounts for 15 years, had looked at the withdrawal slip and then at me. Mr. Cruz, this is nearly your entire savings. Are you certain about this? I am. She'd processed the transaction without further questions, though her expression had said everything. The check had felt heavier than it should, all those zeros on one piece of paper. The notary's office had been in a strip mall off Dale Mabry, between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Mr. Hendricks was an older man, methodical, wearing reading glasses on a chain. He'd spread the mortgage payoff documents across his desk, then looked at me directly. Mr. Cruz, you have options for how to structure this transaction. His pen had tapped each stack of papers. You can make this a gift to your daughter and son-in-law. Straightforward, no strings. Or you can structure it as a secured loan against the property itself. What's the difference? A gift is final. You're transferring wealth with no expectation of repayment. He'd adjusted his glasses. A loan, particularly one secured by the property, protects your interests. If they default on repayment terms, you have legal recourse. Given the amount, $68,000, I'd recommend the loan structure. I'd hesitated. The idea of putting legal conditions on helping my daughter had felt wrong, almost mercenary. It doesn't mean you don't trust them, Hendricks had added as if reading my thoughts. It means you're being prudent. Families have disagreements. Money complicates things. This protects everyone. Make it a loan. The paperwork had taken an hour. Hendricks had explained each clause, each protection, each stipulation. I'd signed where he indicated, watching my signature appear over and over, acknowledging the debt, securing my interest, establishing repayment terms, terms that were never met. Neil had shown up at the house that evening after I'd paid off the mortgage. I'd met him on the porch, the receipt from the mortgage company in my hand. Carl, he'd extended his hand, shaking mine firmly. I can't thank you enough. This mistake won't define me. I'll pay back every cent. You have my word. But his eyes hadn't quite met mine. They'd focused somewhere over my left shoulder, at the street behind me, at anything but direct contact. I'd noticed it then, registered it, but dismissed it as embarrassment. Just take care of my daughter and those boys. Absolutely, you'll see. He'd dropped my hand quickly, backing toward his car. I've got some opportunities lined up. Real estate consulting. Some cryptocurrency recovery strategies. This is temporary. 6 months, maybe a year, and I'll have your money back. 3 months later, he'd called about a business opportunity. $2,000, just to secure his position in a consulting firm. Once I'm established, Carl, the money will flow. This is the foundation. I'd sent the check. 4 months after that, another call. $3,500 for an emergency. Car repairs, medical bills, something urgent that couldn't wait. Just this once, and then I'm on my feet. I'd sent that check too. The requests had continued, each one accompanied by promises, explanations, assurances, each amount slightly larger than the last, each promise more elaborate. I'd tracked them all in my checkbook, watching the pattern emerge, but convincing myself it was temporary, that Neil was just struggling to gain traction. Now, sitting at my kitchen table in the present, I looked at the numbers I'd written in my notebook. 12,000 in additional loans, none repaid, and now $2,000 demanded per weekend to see my own grandsons. I pulled the deed closer, reading the language Hendricks had insisted on. Secured loan against property located at 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. In the event of default, lender maintains priority interest. I hadn't been saving their home. I'd been funding Neil's next gamble, and the next, and the one after that. The documents were still in my name. The loan secured. The notary had been right to structure it this way, even if I hadn't fully understood why at the time. I gathered the papers together, straightening them into a neat stack. The mortgage deed on top, the payment records beneath, my notebook with its careful accounting at the bottom. $73,000, plus $12,000, $85,000 total. I'd given them a home thinking it would build a future. Now those same documents could reclaim it. The kitchen had grown dark while I'd been lost in memory. I reached for the light switch, then stopped. The darkness felt appropriate, clarifying. I'd protected my family, fed his addiction to risk. The difference was becoming clear. My phone sat on the table beside the papers. I picked it up, pulled up my browser, typed Property Law Attorney Tampa. Several names appeared. I scrolled through them, reading credentials, areas of practice, client reviews. Then I set the phone down without calling. This required planning, not impulse. Strategy, not reaction. I'd spent 30 years responding to emergencies. This wasn't one. This was something that needed to be done right. The papers could wait another day, maybe a week. But they wouldn't wait forever. 3 weeks gave me time to think and to plan. I spent the days maintaining my routines. Coffee at 6, newspaper by 7, lunch at noon. But the property documents stayed on my kitchen table, moved aside for meals, and then returned. I researched property law in Florida, reading statute after statute on my laptop, took notes in the margins of my notebook, learned terms I'd never needed before, subordinate interest, foreclosure timelines, notice requirements. The calendar showed April approaching. On the 12th, I marked April 19th and 20th with a red pen. Lake Tarpon, bass fishing. I'd taken Micah and Tyler out there every spring since Micah turned 6. They loved it. The early mornings, the excitement when a line went tight, the competition over who caught the bigger fish. I went out to the garage and found my tackle box on the high shelf, opened it, checking the contents. Hooks needed replacing. The monofilament line was probably brittle. I made a list. New line, split shot weights, a few plastic worms in chartreuse. The fishing rods leaned in the corner, still rigged from last year. I ran my hand along one, imagining Tyler's small fingers gripping it, his face concentrating as he learned to cast. Wednesday evening came. I waited until 7:30, late enough that Neil would be at one of his business meetings, a pattern I'd observed over the years. He was always gone Wednesday evenings, returning around 10 or 11. I dialed Effie's number. She answered on the third ring. "Hello?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Effie, it's Dad." I kept my tone light, conversational. "I was thinking about taking the boys to Lake Tarpon next weekend. The weather's supposed to be perfect for base." Silence. Then, "Oh, Dad, A pause like she was listening for something. "Let me ask Neil. He handles the boys' schedule now." Handles. Not, "we decide together," or "I'll check the calendar." Handles. "Since when do you need permission to let your father see his grandsons?" I kept the edge out of my voice, but barely. "It's not like that. He's better at keeping track of their activities. Sports, school projects. There's a lot to coordinate. Put Micah on the phone. I want to ask him about fishing." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her breathing, rapid and shallow. "They're already in bed, Dad. School night. Maybe we can talk about this over the weekend?" I looked at the clock on my microwave. 7:43. Micah was 10. Tyler was 7. Neither of them had gone to bed before 8:30 since they were toddlers. "It's not even 8 o'clock, Effie." They were tired. "Early day tomorrow. I'll call you Saturday, okay? We'll figure something out." Her voice had that same quality as when she'd stood behind Neil in the doorway, defeated, apologetic, trapped. "Effie, I have to go, Dad. I'll call you." The line went dead. I set my phone on the counter and stood there staring at it. Handles the boys' schedule. Already in bed. "I'll call you." She didn't call Saturday. Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Neil's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering, taking a moment to prepare myself. "Carl." No greeting, no pleasantries. "Effie mentioned your fishing idea." I stayed silent, waiting. "The boys have commitments that weekend. Micah's got a soccer tournament. Tyler has a birthday party Sunday afternoon. Their schedule's completely full." He paused, and I could hear him breathing. "Perhaps if you reconsidered your stance on supporting this family financially, we could find time in their calendar. Work something out. $2,000 per weekend. That's what he was circling back to, what he'd always circle back to. Access to my grandsons had a price tag, and it was non-negotiable. I see. I kept my voice neutral, giving him nothing. Thank you for calling back. Just something to think about, Carl. These boys are growing up fast. A lot of weekends between now and when they're teenagers who don't want to hang out with Grandpa anymore. Be ashamed to miss all of them over a principle. I'll keep that in mind. You do that. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, looking out the window at Mrs. Patterson's house across the street, and she was watering her garden, moving slowly with her cane, tending to her roses. Normal afternoon, normal neighborhood, normal life, commitments, at 7 and 10 years old. I set the phone down and walked to the table where the property documents still sat, opened my laptop beside them, typed real estate attorney Tampa eviction into the search bar. Several firms appeared. I clicked on the first one, Buchanan and Associates, with an office downtown. Their website listed services, landlord-tenant disputes, property recovery, foreclosure assistance. I found the contact page, stared at the phone number. My finger hovered over it. Neil thought he was building a system, thought he could put a price on family, on access, on love, thought he could take the home I'd given them and turn it into leverage against me. But he'd forgotten something important, or maybe he'd never known. The house was in my name. The loan secured against the property. Every legal protection Hendricks had insisted on 3 years ago when I thought I was just being cautious was now a weapon. Neil had built his control system in a house that wasn't his. I picked up my phone and dialed the number from the website. It rang once, twice. A receptionist answered, professional and courteous. Buchanan and Associates, how may I help you? I need to speak with an attorney about property recovery. My voice was steady, calm, the same voice I'd used directing crews at fire scenes. I have a secured loan in default, and I need to understand my options. Let me connect you with Mr. Buchanan's office. May I have your name? Carl Cruz. One moment, Mr. Cruz. The line clicked to hold music. I looked at the fishing rods in the corner of my kitchen, at the calendar with its marked date, at the tackle box I'd optimistically prepared. Neil's voice echoed in my head. Commitments, schedule, supporting the family. I'd supported them enough. Time to collect what I was owed. A week of phone calls and paperwork led to this. Friday afternoon, a white envelope in my jacket's inside pocket, and the sound of children's laughter reaching me before I'd even closed my car door. I'd parked at the curb, not the driveway. This wasn't a social visit. Micah and Tyler were playing in the front yard, something involving a soccer ball and an elaborate set of rules they'd invented themselves. Tyler kicked the ball wide, and it rolled toward the street just as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I got it, Micah called, then froze mid-stride when he saw me. His face transformed instantly. Grandpa! They both dropped everything and ran. Tyler reached me first, launching himself at my legs with complete trust that I'd stay upright, which I did, kneeling fast enough to catch him properly. You came? Are we going fishing tomorrow? His words tumbled over each other. Mom said maybe, but Dad said no, but you're here so we can go, right? Micah arrived a second later, slightly more reserved at 10 years old, but no less happy. Did you bring the tackle box? I've been practicing my casting in the backyard. I hugged them both, feeling the weight of what I was about to do settle heavier on my shoulders. We'll see, buddy. We'll see. The front door opened. Neil stepped out, paused on the threshold, then walked across the yard with deliberate steps. His arms were already crossing his chest before he'd fully reached us. What are you doing here, Carl? His voice had that edge I'd come to recognize. Territorial, annoyed at the intrusion. I thought we had this settled. I stood, keeping one hand on Tyler's shoulder. I'm here to take Micah and Tyler fishing, like we planned. His laugh was short, humorless. Right. We discussed this on the phone, didn't we? He looked at the boys, then back at me, his expression shifting to something almost amused. $2,000. That's the price if you want to play grandfather this weekend. Play grandfather? As if loving these boys was a performance, a hobby I could afford, or not. Here. I reached into my jacket, withdrew the envelope, and extended it toward him. My hand was steady. This is what you've earned. His expression flickered. Surprise, then satisfaction. He thought he'd won. Thought I'd finally bent to his system. He snatched the envelope from my hand and tore it open, pulling out the folded papers inside. His eyes dropped to the text, scanning quickly at first, then slower. I watched his face carefully. The change happened in stages. Confusion first, his brow furrowing, then comprehension, his eyes widening slightly, then color draining from his face before flushing back darker. "What is this?" His voice rose. "You can't—" "Read it carefully," I said, keeping my tone level. "You have 30 days. This is my house." He shook the papers at me, his hand trembling. "You gave this to us. You can't just— It's my house." I kept my eyes on his. "Always has been. The mortgage payoff was structured as a secured loan. The notary made sure of that. You never paid a cent back. The loan's in default." "You're insane. This is— Effie!" He turned toward the house, shouting, "Effie, get out here!" But I was already moving, turning toward my car. The boys stood frozen where I'd left them, confusion replacing their earlier joy. Tyler looked like he might cry. "We'll go fishing soon," I told them, managing a smile. "I promise. You can't evict us." Neil's voice followed me, getting louder, more desperate. "We have rights. This is our home." I opened my car door. Through the front window of the house, I could see Effie's silhouette appearing, frozen in the doorway. She didn't come outside. 30 days, Neil." I said it without looking back. "That's what the law requires. Use them wisely." "I'll fight this. I'll sue you. You'll never see these kids again, you understand me?" "Never." I got in, closed the door, started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Neil stood in the middle of the driveway, still holding the papers. Micah had moved to stand beside him, looking small and confused. Tyler was walking toward Effie, who'd finally stepped onto the porch. I pulled away from the curb, keeping my speed steady and controlled. No rushing, no fleeing. Just leaving. Neil's voice carried down the street, raw and panicked now, the words losing meaning as distance grew. At the stop sign, I glanced in the mirror, one last time. He was on his phone already, pacing the driveway, the white papers crumpled in his fist, already calling someone, an attorney probably, maybe a friend, someone he thought could fix this. Good. Let him try. I turned the corner and they disappeared from view. My hands were still steady on the wheel, but my chest felt tight. The boys' faces, their confusion, their disappointment, stayed with me. 4 weeks. The eviction notice gave them 4 weeks to vacate. In 4 weeks, this would either be over or it would escalate into something uglier. I drove home through late afternoon traffic, the sun casting long shadows across the road. The envelope was gone, delivered. The first move was made. Now I waited to see how Neil would respond. The answer came sooner than I expected. The envelope from Superior Court of Hillsborough County arrived on Tuesday morning, 6 days after I'd handed Neil the eviction notice. The return address told me everything before I even opened it. I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and made coffee first. Whatever was inside could wait 5 minutes. When I finally tore it open, the legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. Neil Morrison, Viesers Carl Cruz. Counter lawsuit claiming the house had been a gift, not a loan. Demanding the eviction be dismissed with prejudice. A gift. $68,000, and he was calling it a gift. I read through it twice, marking the false statements with a red pen. Plaintiff provided funds with no expectation of repayment. Defendant made no demands for payment over 3 years. Property transfer was voluntary and without contractual obligation. Each lie was carefully constructed, just plausible enough to require documentation to disprove. My phone rang on the 3rd day. Effie's name on the screen. I stared at it through 2 rings, knowing what was coming before I answered. "Dad!" Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying for hours. Maybe she had. "Please, you're tearing this family apart." I moved to the window, looking out at the street. Mrs. Patterson was bringing in her trash cans, moving slowly with her cane. Normal Wednesday afternoon. "Effie, can't you just stop this? Can't we fix this without lawyers and courts and—" Her voice broke. "The boys are asking questions. Micah wants to know why you're trying to take our house. Tyler thinks you're mad at him." That landed harder than anything Neil had thrown at me. I closed my eyes. "Sweetheart, I'm not mad at you or the boys. I'm not even mad at Neil. Not really." I tried to keep my voice gentle. "But I can't keep enabling this pattern. He made your children bargaining chips. He put a price tag on being their grandfather. He's just stressed about money. If you'd help instead of attacking. She caught herself, couldn't finish the accusation. I've helped. $68,000 worth, plus another $12,000 since then. $80,000, Effie. I let that sit for a moment. When does helping become enabling? Silence, then barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. You could tell him to settle this. Pay back what he owes or work out a payment plan. I'd consider that. He says you're stealing from us, that you promised the house was ours, and now you're going back on your word. Her voice gained an edge. Did you? Did you promise? I promised to help. I did help. But the paperwork was clear. It was a loan, Effie. The notary explained it to both of you. Neil signed the documents. He says he didn't understand what he was signing. He understood enough to never make a single payment. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the headache building. I love you. I love those boys. But I can't let this continue. Then you're choosing money over family. Neil made that choice when he demanded $2,000 a weekend. I'm just responding. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood there holding the dead phone, looking at Mrs. Patterson's empty driveway. The trash cans were lined up neatly against her garage, everything in its place. By Friday, I'd made 3 calls to different law firms. The first 2 weren't taking new clients. The third, Buchanan and Associates, the firm I'd contacted before, referred me to a colleague who specialized in property disputes. David Wade's office was downtown, 16th floor of a glass building near the courthouse. The elevator ride up gave me time to check my reflection in the polished doors. I'd worn slacks and a button-down, treating this with the seriousness it deserved. The receptionist was professional, friendly. Mr. Cruz, Mr. Wade will see you now. His office was organized chaos, files stacked neatly, law books with multicolored tabs, a computer with 2 monitors displaying what looked like property records. Wade himself was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Mr. Cruz, please sit. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. You mentioned a property recovery situation? I pulled out my folder. Everything organized the way I'd learned in the fire department. Documentation mattered. Chain of evidence mattered. March 2022, I paid off my daughter and son-in-law's mortgage. $68,000. I spread the papers across his desk. The transaction was structured as a secured loan. Notarized, filed with the county, everything proper. Wade picked up the loan agreement, scanning it quickly. His expression remained neutral but focused. He never made a payment, not in 3 years. Then he started demanding money to let me see my grandchildren. I pulled out my notebook with the transaction history. I served an eviction notice. He's countersuing, claiming the money was a gift. Wade's fingers moved across his keyboard, pulling up county records. The lien is properly filed. I can see it here. Recorded April 2022, priority interest, Carl Cruz is line holder. He looked up at me. Your documentation is excellent. Notarized loan agreement, secured lien filed with the county, payment records. This is textbook. Can he just claim it was a gift? Can he lie like that? He can claim anything. Proving it's another matter. Wade set down the papers. The documents speak clearly. We'll file a response to his suit. Present your evidence. Unless he has something substantial, and from what you're showing me, he doesn't, the court will see through his claim. What's this going to cost me? $3,500 retainer. That covers filing the response, initial court appearances, standard discovery. If it goes to trial, we'll discuss additional fees, but I doubt it will. Cases with documentation this clear typically settle or get dismissed quickly. I wrote the check, watching $3,500 disappear with my signature. Money I'd saved, money I'd earned, but necessary. Court date is set for May 28th, Wade said, handing me copies of the papers. I'll file our response this week. In the meantime, don't contact your son-in-law directly. All communication goes through me now. I left his office with a business card, a court date, and a lighter wallet. The sun was setting as I drove home, painting the sky orange and purple. That night, I tried calling Effie, straight to voicemail. I tried texting the boys. Miss you. Love you. See you soon. The messages showed as delivered, but never read. The next morning, I drove to Maple Ridge, knocked on the door, waited. I could see shadows moving inside. Someone was home, but no one answered. I returned home and sat at my kitchen table with the case folder open in front of me. Everything was in order. The law was on my side. The documentation was clear. But across the room, propped against the lamp on the side table, was a photo from last year's fishing trip. Micah holding up a base that was almost too big for him to lift. Tyler grinning beside him, his new fishing rod still in hand. 4 weeks until court. 4 weeks of silence from my family. 4 weeks of wondering if I'd made the right choice. I closed the folder and looked at their faces in the photo, at their smiles, their pride, their trust. I'd done worse things for worse reasons. At least this time, I was fighting for something that mattered. 4 weeks of waiting came down to this. A Wednesday morning in late May, courthouse steps that felt steeper than they should have, and David Wade waiting by the security checkpoint with his briefcase in hand. "Mr. Cruz," he shook my hand firmly. "Ready?" I'd worn my best suit, navy blue, white shirt, burgundy tie, the same outfit I'd worn to retirement ceremonies and funerals, occasions that mattered, as ready as I'll be. We went through security together, emptying pockets into gray plastic bins. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Wade led me to the elevators, pressed the button for the 3rd floor. "Remember, let me do the talking. If the judge asks you a direct question, answer simply and truthfully. Don't elaborate unless asked." He checked his watch. "We're 15 minutes early. Good." The hallway outside courtroom 3B was lined with wooden benches, half filled with people waiting for their cases. Lawyers in suits, defendants in street clothes, a few children playing quietly while their parents talked in hushed voices. Neil arrived 10 minutes later with a man I didn't recognize, shorter, older, carrying a battered briefcase. His attorney, presumably. They stayed at the far end of the hallway. Neil's eyes met mine once, then looked away. When the bailiff called our case, we filed in silently. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 30 feet square, with the judge's bench elevated at the front, 2 tables for counsel and a few rows of gallery seating. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She settled into her chair and opened the file. "Morrison versus Cruz, property recovery matter." She looked up. "Counsels, state your appearances." "David Wade for plaintiff Carl Cruz, Your Honor." "Robert Mackey for defendants Neil and Effie Morrison, Your Honor." "Mr. Wade, this is your action. Proceed." Wade stood, organized his documents with practiced efficiency. "Your Honor, the evidence is unambiguous. In March 2022, Mr. Cruz provided $68,000 to satisfy the mortgage on property located at 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. This transaction was structured as a secured loan, properly documented and notarized. He placed copies of the loan agreement on the judge's bench, then handed one to Mackey. The loan agreement clearly states repayment terms. Mr. Cruz filed a lien with Hillsborough County in April 2022, establishing his priority interest in the property. You'll find the county recording number on page 2. The judge examined the documents, flipping through pages methodically. In the 3 years since this loan was made, defendants have made 0 payments. Not a single dollar toward principal or interest. Mr. Cruz served proper notice to vacate in April of this year. The defendants responded with a countersuit claiming the funds were a gift. "Mr. Mackey?" The judge looked at Neil's attorney. "Your response?" Mackey stood, shuffling papers. "Your Honor, this was a family matter. Mr. Cruz was helping his daughter and her family during a difficult time. The understanding between them was, do you have any documentation showing this was a gift rather than a secured loan?" The judge's tone was neutral but pointed. "Not in writing, Your Honor, but the family understanding and the relationship between—" "Counselor, I asked about documentation." Mackey's jaw tightened. "No, Your Honor. But we believe Mr. Cruz's intent at the time. His intent is clearly stated in the loan agreement he signed and notarized." She tapped the papers in front of her, along with the defendant's signatures acknowledging the debt. I watched Neil's face across the room. His initial confidence had drained away, replaced by something closer to panic. "Your Honor, if I may," Mackey tried again, "this action will result in Mr. Cruz's daughter and grandchildren being displaced. Mr. Mackey, we're here to determine the validity of the eviction notice, not to adjudicate family dynamics." She removed her reading glasses. "The documentation is clear and proper. The loan agreement is valid. The lien is properly filed. The defendants have not made payments. The eviction notice is therefore valid. She looked directly at Neil and his attorney. Defendants have until June 30th to vacate the property at 2847 Maple Ridge Drive. That gives you 5 weeks to make arrangements. Case dismissed. The gavel came down. Final. We stood as the judge exited. Wade gathered his papers, organized everything back into his briefcase. Across the room, Mackie was speaking to Neil in urgent, hushed tones. Neil's face had gone red, his hands clenched into fists. "Let's go," Wade said quietly. In the hallway, he stopped and turned to face me. "Congratulations, Mr. Cruz. Clean victory." But I felt no victory, just a hollow sort of relief that the right thing had been recognized as right. "What about my grandsons?" The question came out before I had fully formed it. "I still can't see them, can't call them. This doesn't fix that." Wade considered. "That's outside my area of practice, but there are legal remedies. Grandparent visitation rights. You'd need a family law attorney." "Can you recommend someone?" "Margaret Stone. She's in the building across the street. Specializes in family law. Handled several grandparent rights cases." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. "I can call her office if you'd like." "Please." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Margaret Stone's office on the 12th floor of a building that overlooked the courthouse. Her office was warmly decorated. Family photos on the walls, plants on the windowsill, comfortable chairs that didn't feel like you were being interrogated. She was maybe 55, with gray streaking through dark hair, wearing a pantsuit and practical shoes. Her handshake was firm without being aggressive. "Mr. Wade filled me in briefly, but I'd like to hear it from you. Start from the beginning." I told her everything. The mortgage payoff, Neil's pattern of loans, the blocked access to Micah and Tyler, the $2,000 per weekend demand. She took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Florida statute 752-11 provides for grandparent visitation when it serves the child's best interest. She set down her pen. "Your situation, systematic blocking of contact, unreasonable financial conditions, fits the criteria. We can file a petition for court-ordered visitation." "Will this make things worse with my daughter?" "Possibly." Stone didn't sugarcoat it. "You're already in conflict. This adds another legal front, but it also protects your relationship with the boys. Without court intervention, Neil controls all access. This removes that power from him." "What's the timeline?" "I'll file the petition this week. They'll be served within days. Hearing typically scheduled within 4 to 6 weeks. The court takes these cases seriously, especially when there's evidence of parental alienation. How much? $2,800 retainer. That covers filing, initial hearing, and standard preparation." I wrote the check. Another piece of my savings gone. Another legal battle joined, but necessary. "One thing, Mr. Cruz." Stone looked at me seriously. "This might be the push your daughter needs. Sometimes people can't see clearly until forced to by outside pressure. The court process might help her recognize the situation she's in." I left her office with another business card, another case folder, another court date to wait for. The petition was filed on Friday. By Monday, Neil would receive notice that I wasn't stopping at the house. I was fighting for what mattered. 2 boys who missed their grandfather and didn't understand why the adults around them had gone to war. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with both case folders in front of me. The property case, 1. The visitation case, just beginning. My phone sat beside the folders, silent. No calls from Effie, no texts from the boys. June 30th was 5 weeks away. The visitation hearing, probably late June or early July. Everything was moving forward. Everything was in order, but the boys still felt impossibly far away. The third landlord that week handed the application back with the same apologetic expression the others had worn. "I'm sorry, but with this credit score and the recent legal judgments showing up on the background check." She slid the papers across the desk. "We can't approve your application." I wasn't there to see it, but Effie told me later. The way Neil's jaw had clenched, the way his hand had crumpled the application before he caught himself, the way they'd walked to the car in silence while Micah and Tyler asked when they'd see their new room. It was the first week of June, 26 days until the eviction deadline. They tried 4 more places over the next week. Apartments, townhouses, even a small house with yard space for the boys. Each time, the same result. Credit too low. Debt-to-income ratio too high. Recent legal filings showing liability. Neil had built his life on borrowed money and charm. When both ran out at once, the foundation collapsed fast. The bank visit came next. Neil went alone, meeting with a loan officer who pulled up his credit report on a computer screen. I heard about this from Wade, who heard it from someone who heard it from someone else. Small professional circles in a city like Tampa. The loan officer had turned the screen toward Neil, letting him see the numbers himself. Credit score in the low 500s. Multiple judgments. The eviction case showing as active. The grandparent visitation petition newly filed. Mr. Morrison, your debt-to-income ratio is concerning, and these recent legal filings show significant ongoing liability. We can't extend credit under these circumstances. Neil had left without the loan, without options, without control. That's when Wade and I filed the debt collection lawsuit. He owes you $12,000 in unpaid loans, Wade had said during our consultation, plus 3 years of interest. We can file for recovery. Will it help anything? It puts more pressure on him, makes his financial situation even more precarious, and legally, you're entitled to repayment. I'd signed the papers, written another check for filing fees. The lawsuit was served 2 days later. Effie told me Neil had exploded when he opened that envelope, had thrown the papers across the living room, paced like a caged animal, his voice rising with each circuit. Your father is destroying this family. Over money. Over a house he gave us. She'd tried to defend me, weakly. Dad did pay for the house. He did loan you the money. Whose side are you on? Neil had spun on her, pointing. After everything I've done for this family, you're going to defend him. She'd backed down, apologized, retreated. But something had shifted. She'd seen him without the mask, without the charm, without any control at all. Just panic and blame and no solutions. The breaking point came from an unexpected source. Effie was on the phone with her cousin, trying to explain the situation without fully explaining it, when Micah wandered into the kitchen. Mom, why can't we see Grandpa anymore? The question was innocent, direct, asked without understanding the complexity of adult conflict, without knowing about lawsuits and evictions and money. It's complicated, honey, adult stuff. But he always takes us fishing this time of year. Tyler really wants to go. Did we do something wrong? Effie's face had crumpled. She'd ended the call with her cousin, rushed to the bathroom, and locked the door. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Effie's name on the screen. I'd stared at it for a full ring, processing. She hadn't called me in months, hadn't responded to my calls or texts. And now, her name appearing, I answered on the third ring. Effie? Dad? Her voice broke immediately. It's me. Everything's falling apart. I don't know what to do. I moved to the living room window, looking out at the street. A normal Tuesday afternoon. Mailman delivering packages. Neighbor washing his car. Sweetheart, tell me what's happening. I'm here. We can't find a place to live. No one will rent to us. Neil's credit is... I didn't know how bad things were. She was crying openly now. And the boys keep asking about you. Micah wanted to know if they did something wrong, if that's why you don't visit anymore. Each word landed like a physical blow. You know that's not true. You know I've been trying. I know you have. She took a shaky breath. He's not handling any of this well. He blames you for everything, but I can see he doesn't have any answers. No plan, no money, nothing. You and the boys can stay with me. I said it carefully, offering without pushing. You know that, right? My door is always open. Silence. Then, I can't. I can't do that to him. Effie, I just needed to hear your voice, Dad. I needed someone who... She trailed off, couldn't finish. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, I'm here. I have to go. Neil's coming back. The panic returned to her voice. Don't tell him I called. Please. I won't. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. The line went dead. I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at the blank screen. She'd called. After all these weeks of silence, of blocked calls and ignored texts, she'd reached out. Not because I'd demanded it, not because a court had ordered it, because she'd needed her father. The wall Neil had built around her was showing cracks. Small ones. Hairline fractures in concrete that looked solid, but wasn't. How long before those cracks spread? How long before the whole structure came down? June 30th was 2 weeks away. The visitation hearing was scheduled for July 8th. Stone had called that morning with the date. Neil was running out of time, out of options, out of places to hide from the consequences of his choices. And Effie was starting to see it, starting to question, starting to crack. I set the phone down and looked at the calendar on my kitchen wall. Red circle around June 30th, another around July 8th. Checkpoints in a long battle. Victories that felt hollow because the real prize, time with Micah and Tyler, remained just out of reach. But Effie had called. That meant something. It had to mean something. The family court felt different from where we'd fought over the house. Smaller, somehow more personal. When Effie passed me in the courthouse hallway, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Neil walked 3 steps ahead of her, rigid and silent. Margaret Stone was already at the plaintiff's table when I entered the courtroom, files organized in neat stacks. She looked up, nodded once. "Ready?" she asked quietly. I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway. The judge entered, a man this time, maybe 60, with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He settled into his chair and opened the file. Cruz versus Morrison, petition for grandparent visitation. Miss Stone, you may proceed. Stone stood, smoothing her jacket. Your Honor, Carl Cruz seeks only what Florida statute 72011 grants every grandparent the right to maintain a meaningful relationship with his grandchildren. The evidence will show systematic and unjustified interference by the children's father. She presented my notebook first, holding it up for the judge to see. Page after page of dates, times, attempted phone calls that went unanswered, visits to the house that were refused. April 20th, phone call declined. April 27th, denied entry at the door. May 4th, text messages ignored. Stone's finger traced down the entries, a pattern spanning months of deliberate exclusion. Then she called her first witness, Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor. I hadn't known Stone had contacted her. Mrs. Patterson walked to the stand slowly, using her cane, and was sworn in. Under Stone's questioning, she described what she'd seen from across the street. I watched Carl try to visit several times. He'd knock, and Neil would come to the door but not let him in. Sometimes the boys were right there, asking to see their grandpa. She paused, shook her head. Neil would send them back inside. Carl never made a scene, just left quietly each time. Neil's jaw clenched from where he sat. His attorney, a different one this time, slightly more competent looking, took notes, but said nothing. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Stone helped her down from the stand. Your Honor, I'd like to call Effie Morrison. I watched Effie's face go pale. She looked at Neil, who stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge her. The bailiff repeated the name. Effie Morrison to the stand. She walked forward like someone approaching an execution. The oath was administered, and she sat down, hands folded tightly in her lap. Stone approached gently, her voice softer than it had been with the other witness. Mrs. Morrison, how long has your father known your sons? Since they were born. Effie's voice was barely audible. Has he been involved in their lives? Yes. He used to see them every week, sometimes more. In all those years, in all that time with Micah and Tyler, did your father ever give you reason to fear for their safety? Effie's eyes found mine for just a second, then dropped. No, never. Has he ever been violent with them? Angry? Inappropriate in any way? No. Has he ever done anything that would suggest he shouldn't be around your children? No. The word came out stronger this time. Stone paused, letting that sit. Mrs. Morrison, who made the decision to prevent your father from seeing Micah and Tyler? Effie's hands twisted together. I could see her swallow, see the conflict written across her face. My husband did, her voice cracked. Neil decided I went along with it. From the corner of my eye, I saw Neil lean forward, his expression darkening. Did your father ever do anything to harm or endanger your children? No. Effie looked up now, directly at Stone. He loves them. He always has. He's a good grandfather. Thank you. No further questions. Neil's attorney tried a weak cross-examination, asking about family disagreements, and financial complications. But Effie's answers remained consistent. The facts were the facts. I'd done nothing to deserve being cut off from my grandsons. The judge removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly. The evidence is clear. Mr. Cruz has demonstrated a pattern of attempting contact that was systematically denied without legitimate cause. Temporary visitation order is granted, effective immediately. Every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., beginning July 26th. He looked directly at Neil. Mr. Morrison, this is a court order. You will comply. Final ruling will be issued within 30 days. The gavel came down. Outside the courtroom, I saw Neil grab Effie's arm, not violently but possessively, pulling her to the side of the hallway. His voice was low, urgent, angry. You just sided with him against me, in front of a judge. Do you understand what you've done? I was under oath. Effie's voice rose, defensive. I couldn't lie. You could have. He caught himself, looked around at the people passing. You better figure out where your loyalty lies. Fast. Effie pulled her arm free. Maybe I already have. Neil stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. She stood there, watching him go, her shoulders slumped. Stone appeared beside me, the temporary order in her hand. Victory, Mr. Cruz. Clean and clear. Thank you. I took the paper, folded it carefully. There's something else. Stone pulled out her phone, scrolled through emails. David Wade copied me on a notice this morning. The sheriff's office scheduled forced eviction for August 2nd. Your son-in-law ignored the June 30th deadline. I looked down the hallway where Neil had disappeared. So it's really happening. It's really happening. They'll physically remove them if necessary. Stone put her phone away. Everything's converging, Mr. Cruz. The house, the visitation, the debt collection. Neil's running out of places to hide. I thought about Effie, standing alone in the hallway, watching her husband abandon her after she told the truth. What about my daughter? That's her choice to make. Stone's voice was kind but realistic. You can offer support, but she has to decide when she's had enough. I drove home with the temporary order on my passenger seat. July 26th was circled on the calendar in my kitchen. 10 days away. 10 days until I'd see Micah and Tyler again, until we'd go fishing like we used to, until things could start to feel normal. But August 2nd was circled too, the day the sheriff would enforce what Neil had refused to accept, the day consequences became physical, real, unavoidable. Everything was coming to a head. Neil's control was crumbling. Effie's alliance with him was fracturing, and I had my grandsons back, at least for Saturdays. At least for now, it would have to be enough. 10 days felt like 10 years, but finally July 26th arrived. They were waiting on the curb when I pulled up, Micah with his backpack already on, Tyler bouncing on his toes with excitement. Neil stood in the doorway of their apartment, arms crossed, saying nothing. Effie gave a small wave, apologetic and tentative. Grandpa? Tyler reached my car first, yanking the door open. You brought the good tackle box. Wouldn't dream of bringing anything else. I helped him with his seatbelt while Micah climbed in the other side. Ready for some bass fishing? Can we go to the same spot as last time? The one with the dock? That's exactly where we're headed, buddy. I waved to Effie before pulling away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Neil turn and go inside without acknowledging us. Effie stood alone for a moment, watching us drive off. Lake Tarpon looked exactly as I remembered, water reflecting the morning sky, the old dock extending out over water that held promise of fish below. I helped the boys with their rods, showing them how to tie the hooks, how to thread the plastic worms onto the line just right. Hold it steady, I told Tyler as his line went taut. Feel that? That's a bouse testing the bait. Wait for the second tug, then set the hook. The rod bent dramatically. Tyler's eyes went wide. Now! He yanked back, and the fish was on. I guided his hands, helping him reel, letting him do the work, but keeping him steady. When the base broke the surface, Tyler's whoop of joy echoed across the water. Grandpa, look, is this the biggest one today? That's a beauty, Micah, but Tyler's got some competition now. We fished until noon, then broke for sandwiches I'd packed in the cooler. The boys sat on either side of me on the dock, legs dangling over the edge, talking about school and friends and a science project Micah was excited about. We're learning about firefighters and social studies, Tyler said through a mouthful of sandwich. I told my teacher my grandpa was a fire captain. Did you tell them about the time we saw the fireboat at the harbor? Not yet. Can we go see it again soon? Absolutely. Next Saturday if you want. Because there would be next Saturday, and the one after that, and the one after that. On August 2nd, I wasn't at Maple Ridge Drive, but Wade called me that afternoon. Sheriff's Department executed the eviction this morning. Your son-in-law and daughter were given 2 hours to remove essential belongings. The rest was placed in storage. He paused. They moved to an apartment in Seminole Heights. Small place, from what I understand. How did Neil take it? About as well as you'd expect. But there was nothing he could do. Deputies supervised the entire process. A week later, the debt collection case settled. Neil's attorney proposed a payment plan, $400 per month for 30 months. Wade had recommended I reject it, push for a lump sum, but I'd told him to accept. Why? He'd asked. Because Effie asked me to. She'd called the day before, asking if there was any way to make the payments manageable. She's trying to rebuild. I'm not going to make that harder than it needs to be. The call from Effie came on a Tuesday evening in mid-August. I was reading the newspaper, the same routine I'd had for years, when my phone rang. Dad? Her voice was different, vulnerable but clearer somehow. I need to say something. You were right. About everything. I was too scared to see it. I set down the paper. Sweetheart, what matters is what you do now, you and the boys. That's what I care about. I'm thinking about leaving him. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back. I don't know how yet. Don't know where I'd go or how I'd manage, but I can't keep living like this. I can't let the boys grow up thinking this is what family looks like. Whatever you decide, you'll have a place here. You and Micah and Tyler. Always. She was quiet for a moment. He blames you for everything. The house, the money, me testifying in court. He can't see that he did this to himself. Do you see it? I do now. I should have seen it years ago. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. You were trying to hold your family together. That's what you're supposed to do. You just needed time to realize you were holding on to something that was already broken. We talked for another 20 minutes. She wasn't ready to leave yet, but she was planning, thinking, growing stronger. The final court order came in late August. Permanent visitation rights, every Saturday from 10 to 6. Stone called to tell me, her voice pleased. Congratulations, Mr. Cruz. It's official. That Saturday, I picked up the boys from the apartment again. Neil wasn't there this time. Effie said he'd taken a shift doing delivery work, something he'd found through an app on his phone. The man who'd once demanded $2,000 per weekend was now driving packages around Tampa for $20 an hour. At the lake, Tyler caught a bass bigger than his last one. Micah matched it an hour later. We took pictures with my phone, the boys holding up their catches with proud grins. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, Tyler reeled in his line and turned to me. Grandpa, we're going to do this every Saturday now, right? Forever? I looked at both of them, Micah coiling his line carefully, Tyler waiting for my answer with complete trust in his eyes. Every Saturday, buddy, rain or shine, that's a promise. Even when we're teenagers? Especially when you're teenagers, though you might not want to hang out with an old man by then. Yes, we will. Tyler's response was immediate, emphatic. This is the best part of the week. We fished until the sun touched the horizon, turning the lake golden. The cooler held 4 bass, enough for me to teach them how to clean fish next time, if Effie was okay with it. On the drive home, both boys fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted and happy. In my rearview mirror, I could see Tyler's fishing cap tilted over his eyes, Micah's head resting against the window. This right here was what every lawsuit, every sleepless night, every difficult choice had been for. Not revenge, not even justice, really. Just this. 2 boys who knew their grandfather would always be there, who understood that promises could be kept, that love didn't have conditions or price tags, that family meant showing up. I'd lost most of my retirement savings, spent thousands on attorneys, fought battles in courtrooms, and suffered months of silence from my daughter. But watching those boys sleep, peaceful and secure, I knew I'd won the only thing that mattered. Neil had his consequences, lost home, lost money, lost control. Effie was finding her strength, learning she had choices. The legal system, slow as it was, had worked the way it was supposed to. And me? I had my Saturdays. I had 2 grandsons who ran to my car with backpacks ready. I had a tackle box full of lures and a lake full of fish and a calendar full of promises I intended to keep. That was justice. Real justice. Everything else was just paperwork. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching,